Today, the SME's uphill struggles. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics White Notice Post, covering finance and property news with a distinctly Australian flavour. Today, I'm joined by somebody deep in the commercial sector with some very interesting ideas around the SMEs and the battles that they're facing at the moment. Eddie, hello, good to see you.
G'day, Martin, good to see you. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty warm here today, actually. I think summer's come back, which is, don't know what's happening. So, Eddie, great to have you on the show. And I think a good place to start would just for you to give a bit of introduction to you and to your business, and then we can go from there.
No problem. So I'm the general manager at Network Infinity. We are business brokers by nature. We have an office here in Sydney. We have one in Melbourne and one in Brisbane. We've got professional licensed business agents solely selling businesses on behalf of those who need our services. This gives us a great insight into many businesses in different sectors, in different industries. We get to see what a lot of people don't see, and we do also get to see a lot of these businesses who are struggling. And unfortunately, a lot of the time when someone wants to sell their business, it's due to, it's not going great for them.
Yeah. And has the rate of disposal of businesses gone up or gone down over the last few months?
Funny enough, it's actually gone down. And we've spoken to several people at the moment who we thought would be jumping at the opportunity to sell their business. And a lot of them are hanging on at the moment. But I believe my personal opinion would be it's under a false pretense, false economy, if you want to say, because they're getting things like JobKeeper support. They're getting a reduction in their rent at the moment. Their customers are also receiving JobKeepers. A lot of them may have had their mortgages put on hold. So there's this sense of everything is okay at the moment, or if on the flip side, for some people, it's actually better than it was before. The cities are virtually empty in the 3 states that we deal with. That means that a lot of the people that were working in the city are now working from home. So we're seeing a boost in the suburban businesses, food and hospitality based businesses. But that does come at a price, Martin, and it's one of the things I do want to talk about, which is the what's been dubbed the frenemies out there. And there is a lot of...
Yeah, there is something quite weird going on, isn't there, at the moment? So let's unpack that a bit more.
Okay, well, look, I'll start with these so-called frenemies. You've got and Uber Eats is probably the biggest of them all. And I don't know if a lot of these consumers out there actually know, by ordering via these third-party softwares or businesses, they're actually hurting the local businesses. So everyone appreciates that they think they're supporting them. Inadvertently, they are hurting them because, I'll put it out there, I know the rates that Uber Eats charges. Everyone out there has different ideas. I've been told different figures. I've had several retail stores myself, and I can tell you we were paying between 33% and 38.5% as a commission, so to speak, to these companies. Yes, they do provide a great service. They send a driver to pick up the order and deliver it on your behalf. But they also charge the end user a small delivery fee. Now, where I think the problem is, to a degree, these consumers are paying a $5, $3, $6, whatever the little charge might be at the end there. They feel like they're paying for the service they're receiving. But the reality is the shopkeeper or the business owner is actually paying a significant amount. So when you've got an average basket, I've been told, is between $27 and $32. Sorry, I should clarify. I'm talking now predominantly sort of a hospitality takeaway food type business.
Sure.
So the average basket is between $27 and $32. $32 is the higher end. Now, takeaway 38.5%. I'm talking inclusive of GST. but that does equate to a fair amount. Now, the ATO apparently has benchmarks, which I don't even agree with. Like I said, I've had approximately a dozen food outlets, and I believe the benchmark is 30% for cost of goods. I strongly disagree. I mean, we've got the luxury of seeing the back end of 2,000 odd food and hospitality businesses, and 30% is that let's call it the benchmark, the holy grail of cost of goods sold. Not many businesses actually achieve those numbers. Now, we'll go with the ATO's benchmarks, I've been told, 30%. Also 30% apparently for labor costs, which is very, very rare, very rare. But let's assume that we're up to 60, aren't we? Add the 38.5 for the commission for the Uber Eats, let's say, or the likes. I believe that's already 98.5%. Am I right?
Yeah.
Then you've got rent, outgoings, GS. You've got your electricity, gas. I can give you a really good example of how much electricity has gone up. So, a store that I used to own myself, I know this story actually blows a lot of people's minds. So this store's electricity bill was on average $550 a quarter when I used to run that store. Now, fast forward about 8 years, as a business broker, I went to sell that business. I can tell you, I don't think they added a single fridge to that shop. The electricity bill was about $1,200 a month, no longer a quarter, per month. And then I read somewhere that electricity costs went up 10%. I'm no mathematician, but these don't stack up too well.
Right. So the point you're making is that it's pretty tough. In fact, you could look at retail, you can look at the food and hospitality sector. Pretty much, wherever you look, the margins are actually quite tight before you start, as you say, rates, electricity.
Extremely.
And then if you use the likes of Uber or those third-party delivery services, basically they take a huge chunk out of the business such that it's very hard to make a return on any of those transactions, despite the fact that, as you say, end consumers probably think, well, I've paid my $5, so that's fine. And it's really, I think, a really good example of what's going on, if you like, below the waterline versus what is actually publicly reported, because I suspect many people wouldn't understand these sorts of dynamics.
Well, no, I agree, and I think you're right to assume that. So a lot of people, I think they've got the right intention. They do want to support their local business. Unfortunately, they're going through these third parties who own, and I'll get into a little bit more of where the problems may lay. They own the customer. They are the ones putting in the order with the store. But when they have a problem, which happens quite regularly, their drivers pick up the food late, the food goes cold, it becomes the store's problem, and they will be the ones receiving the nasty phone calls and whatnot. But at the end of the day, the customer belongs to that third party.
Yeah.
And as a store owner, they don't have any control on it. They don't even have the contact details of the end user to ring them and say, look, we've made the food on time according to the system, but unfortunately the driver's not here. So I've experienced it firsthand where these store owners are getting abused and blamed for it. They have no control on it. But now what's even more astonishing to me is these companies aren't satisfied with that. They're starting to open their own dark kitchens, they call it. They own the customers. They own the database. They know what you like to order, where you are ordering it from, how much you're paying. And to a degree, they know what's in that item. So let's say, Martin, you like to buy a burger called the Big Kahuna every Friday night from, Joe's Burger Shop, right? Sounds good. Well, I'm the third-party platform that you generally like to order it through. So I know that the Big Kahuna we advertise has whatever it might be, right? Pineapple, beetroot, whatever. How hard is it for me as a third-party company to open a dark kitchen and make a very similar product? It's almost like Coles doing their black and gold or black who's that IGA?
IGA,
One of them's doing that, right?
Yep.
They're doing their
own brand.
Their own home brands, yes.
Yep.
So now these guys are doing that. So not only are they're taking the customers away from them, it's almost like the stores or the owners don't have a choice really. If they're not on the platform, they're going to miss out on that bit of business, but it's not enough to cover their costs. This was always meant to be, or it's sold to the store owners as it's on and above what you're already doing. But little do these store owners know that their customers eventually start going through the third party because, let's face it, it's easier to order it and sit at home than go and pick it up.
Sure. And this makes the point, isn't it, that actually more and more it's the digital channels and the data that becomes effectively the critical element of value in the chain between the consumer and the retailer. And so if you've got somebody who's intruding in that value chain, they're able to control the chain. They can control the price, but also, as you say, can then construct alternative offers. So it is, as your Fremini flag, I think, is exactly right.
Yeah, and it's flying high at the moment. And it doesn't just end there. Look, even the feel on the streets is different, right? When there's stores that are predominantly empty, yes, they might be busy doing hundreds of orders through these third-party platforms while losing money for the privilege of it. There's no people in the stores. There's no atmosphere left. The chain effect is there. It's the store next door that may have lived off, I don't know, selling ice creams to the people who just finished dinner. Well, they're not going to have their customers either.
So it's the footfall thing, isn't it? So rather than having people perhaps drop into 2 or 3 stores, in the strip, as it were, they now basically do it online, and that means that effectively a number of different players essentially get hit the same way. And is that one of the reasons? Because one of the things I've noticed as I've gone through various places around the place is we've got more and more vacant shops. We've actually had more and more businesses just close down. Is this part of the reason?
I believe so. Yes. Yes.
Right.
We do see a lot of these stores closing down because they just can't afford to keep going. We've had a lot of sales of businesses where the owner is getting out purely because of financial reasons. They can't keep running, and they haven't even been able to sustain the business long enough for the sale to eventuate.
Right.
They're almost, unfortunately, it's almost like a credit card now, where what they're doing is they've still got to live, these store owners, and I think half the problem is a lot of them are owned by your mum and dad operators. They might be great at doing what they do. They're not great at running the numbers and understanding. Right.
Well, I was just going to come to that, because it seems to me that I run some SME surveys, right, and it's clear to me that there are people who are very good at what they do in terms of laying bricks or cooking or whatever it is, but in terms of the commercial acumen that's required to make a business work, that is really quite sadly lacking.
Well, yes, it is, but I mean, if you look at the number of hours these people are doing, and you might find I reference a lot to, again, food and hospitality-based businesses. The reason I do that is they are the more dominant, businesses out there. So when we're dealing with sales, 19 out of 20 will be some form of retail, predominantly food and hospitality. So we get to see a lot of these people, talk to them, try to help them as well. But yeah, a lot of these people can't even provide us a P&L, because in reality, who has time to do a P&L for their local burger shop, takeaway shop, whatever it might be? And that's where unfortunately, it's a double-edged sword, because they're not seeing that they're losing money, because what they're doing is taking a couple of dollars out of the till just to live day to day, because they're working their 80 hours a week.
Yes.
Because they can't afford more. It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about the official processes? I'm thinking of GST and tax and all those other things, because I know that people keep saying, well, we want to remove red tape. But it seems to me, as a small business myself, that the amount of time and effort I have to spend now just on doing all the administrivia, is unbalanced based on the size and shape of my business.
Do you remember once upon a time it used to say, did this take more than 10 minutes to do your BAS statement?
I know.
I don't think they ask that anymore because they know
Yes.
it takes hours and hours and hours of work just to show them that you're not ripping them off.
Yep.
Okay, GST, it's a thing. We've got to pay it. I don't agree with the fact that it's kind of a hidden cost. I think that every business should be advertising, and I think they do this in America. The cost is $10 plus tax, so that the consumer doesn't feel like they're paying $11 to the vendor, which they do that. But it also gives them the luxury at any stage of increasing the GST, and I personally think the blame will be put back onto the business owner or the business itself.
Yeah.
And sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I think you make an interesting point. I mean, you actually should be disclosing, obviously, GST separately in terms of any transactions. But the process of being able to assemble all the information and to be able to actually make it presentable is not straightforward. And then, of course, if you've got payroll and if you've got the one-touch payroll system now that more and more people are being herded into. But that, again, it takes time and effort, doesn't it?
Yes. I think it's mandatory.
Yep.
To do that single-touch payroll now, if I'm not wrong.
Yep.
But yeah, the amount of time for the paperwork is horrendous. The other thing is, I don't think it necessarily does work for stores like those food businesses, because when they buy a lot of their products in, they are GST exempt.
Yep.
But because they've been processed while they put the sandwich together or whatnot, it's now GST inclusive. Yep. Now, look, I've seen it firsthand, and I know there's a cash economy, and I know a lot of people frown upon it. I do understand. But let's just say at the end of the day, they were making their businesses operate one way or another, like America does with a lot of their helpers. People made ends meet. People made a bit of money. They paid a bit of tax. Everyone was happier.
Yep.
These days, it's quite the opposite. So by the time you pay everything, you're negative. You're running at 120%. So that's why you see how many people now have payment plans with the ATO on their GST alone.
Yep.
Right? They don't have $15,000 to $20,000 a quarter to pay because there's no money left, because it's just so hard for them to make ends meet. And I'm quite passionate about that, because I see too many of these poor, again, mums and dad operations. I see these people losing hand over fist, losing their properties, losing their life savings because they took a risk in life.
Yep.
I don't think they should be penalised so much.
Yeah, well, it's certainly very concerning if you look at the longevity of many small businesses. In some industries, 30 to 40% fail within the first 18 months to 2 years. And in others, if you look over 3 to 5 years, more than half have actually fallen over. So you see this all the time with people starting a new business and then it failing. Obviously, there are some that actually do survive and actually are able to survive into the medium to long term. But if you look at it by particular industry, certainly retail and some of the hospitality and entertainment, that's where a lot of the turnover, it seems to me, is. And I guess my question for you is, how on earth do you try and value a business, right? So if obviously if it's going to be disposed, when you've got all of these issues, I mean, it must be quite complicated to try and figure out what it's really worth, if anything.
It's extremely complicated. It's a very common question we get. Actually, a very common question, and I have noticed that a lot of people have these valuation tools that they've created. It's great. Look, in some industries, it works. In accounting, professional industries, things like that, we can give you a very accurate estimate within a 5 to 10% tolerance. Other industries, not so much. You could have, the same business from one suburb to another with quite a large difference in price. It'll be based on security, longevity. Depending on the type of business it is, the lease, the premises might hold value. The owner of the business might also hold value. So restaurants of certain sizes, you'd find that the owner is generally also the chef or the cook, and they are quite, I guess, a key personnel for that business. When you take them out of the business, what you've got is a chateau. You've got the equipment, you've got the fit out, and that's what they'll sell on. Whereas when you get to I guess the next level where it's almost a faceless type of operation where it's a big food hall, lots of tables, like a club, an RSL place, places like that. No one goes there for the chef, and let's admit it, RSL food's never really great, but a lot of people do go. Sorry, I digress, but to answer your question, I think the way we determine it is because we're dealing with hundreds and hundreds of buyers on a daily basis, and again, hundreds of vendors on a daily basis. We ourselves can take a guess, and it's called an agent's estimate for a reason, because it's not an official valuation. Some businesses will get a valuation done on it. A lot of the times they're not even accurate. We've had some businesses valued with, let's say, tens of millions of dollars in discrepancies. It just doesn't marry up. And well, I don't know where else I was going with that.
No, I think you've made a good point there. So I guess I got two final questions for you. The first is, of all the things we've been talking about, what's the one thing that you think government should change to make it easier for small business to thrive and survive? Is there something that's obvious, or is it just too complicated?
I have one opinion, quite a simple one, as in simple to say. Look, I'll go back to our frenemies here.
Yeah.
And I think if you want to add value, you want to sell yourself as a value add to a business, or your business has any value, the end user should be happy to pay you. So if you want to order your favorite takeaway food from down the road via a third-party platform, and it's going to cost that end user, the business 38% or 35%, plus you $5, working it out off let's say a $10 order, just to keep it simple. It's never. Well, then the end user should be paying that $3.50 plus the $5 delivery charge.
Right.
Now that's on a $10 order. So when your average order is between $27 and $32, it amounts to about $18 or so in a delivery fee. I do wonder if by doing that, if these third-party platforms had to charge everything to the end user, how many people would drop off those platforms and start going out again, and the streets would be a bit more vibrant again.
Yep.
That alone, I think, would fix a lot of problems. And considering these companies claim that they are best thing since sliced bread, well, then I would assume that the end user would be happy to pay for their services.
Right.
We all know they won't be, not at those rates.
Yeah.
But why should the business have to pay for it?
Yeah. Well,
we take that expense away, and you'll watch how many of these businesses start, at least getting back into the black.
Yeah. Right. So as you said earlier on, they're cannibalising their own revenue to try and get turnover at the moment, and that of course is not necessarily sustainable. And I guess my last question for today is, you touched on this at the start with the JobKeeper, Job Seeker. We know that later in the year, probably September, maybe later, that's essentially going to in some way be withdrawn. Do you think that's going to create a significant crisis across the industries that you're looking at?
Personally, I do, yes. Because you've got to just look at it simply, the amount of people who are on JobKeeper. So if we look at it from both sides, let's look at it from the businesses side. At the moment they're enjoying rental reductions to a degree. They're enjoying the benefit of JobKeeper paying the majority of their wages. Their customers, on the flip side, are enjoying mortgages being put on hold and receiving JobKeepers and having time on their hands because they're not all going into work anymore. So they are strolling up to the local street. And I think right now it's been better than ever when it comes to social buzz out there in the local communities anyway.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much for the poor guys in Victoria, but I mean, in Sydney, we've been enjoying it.
Yeah.
You take all that away, that local customer that walked up to his local cafe every day and bought a coffee. All of a sudden, his JobKeeper stopped and his mortgage is being called in. What's going to happen?
Mm. Yeah.
Then the store owner has to pay the full rent and the full wages.
Yep.
But he hasn't got all those customers coming in anymore. Ooh, it's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah, well, that's my view too. So I've had the view for some time that, and I see it in my service, the SME sector is really already under some pressure, but there's a little bit of latitude because of all the government support. But as that fades away, my expectation is that we're going to see higher failure rates. We're going to see more businesses effectively giving up, and that's going to just put more downward pressure on the employment or higher unemployment. But more importantly, those small businesses become yet another casualty of the current cycle. And certainly my research suggests that post an economic crisis like we're having, it's a number of years before the business cycle really picks up again. So there's really no V-shaped recovery here. And in fact, we probably haven't yet even come into the first part of the down part. We're in early days, which is why I say I think the uphill struggle for SMEs has only just started.
Mate, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think this has also changed. The whole landscape has changed. This is not something we're going to bounce back from. It's all changed.
Yeah.
There is a lot of businesses in the CBDs. There are a lot of businesses, I should say, in the CBD areas that have learned from this, that they don't need to be paying these huge rents anymore because people can work from home.
Yep.
So I do believe the landscape has changed, and I think these frenemies, again, they've also changed. And just, I want to tell everyone out there, this is not just a COVID issue. This was all happening pre-COVID.
Yep.
This has just highlighted the issues and given us a name to put to it.
Yep. The SME sector is under pressure. It's probably going to get more severe. I agree with you. It was actually severe before COVID, so COVID has just amped up all the issues. But unfortunately, many small businesses are going to fail, I think, ahead. And that's probably another reason why the economy is going to be in the slow lane for some time. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks, Martin. Nice talking to you.
Cheers.
Take care.